Right now, inside your body, like right this very second, a microscopic cascade failure is taking place.
Yeah, and it's definitely not an illness or an accident for that matter.
Right. It is a highly orchestrated, system-wide sequence of biological errors, and it's happening in literally every single one of your cells simultaneously.
It really is the ultimate domino effect. I mean, we often think of aging as this, vague, mysterious ticking clock.
Getting older.
Exactly. But biologically speaking, it is a very specific, measurable breakdown of machinery.
And that is exactly what we are plunging into today for this deep dive. Our mission here is to just, well, cut completely through the noise.
Which there is a lot of.
Oh, totally. If you look online, there are thousands of anti-aging fads, serums, miracle diets, you name it. We are looking past all of that marketing today.
Yeah, we're going straight to the scientific consensus.
Right, specifically a landmark 2013 biological framework, and then its massive 2023 update that mapped out what researchers officially call the hallmarks of aging.
Yeah, we're going to look at the actual undeniable biochemical changes that dictate exactly why and how the human body breaks down over time.
But to really ground this, we need to establish what actually qualifies as a hallmark in this framework, right? Because they didn't just throw stuff on a list.
No, not at all. The researchers were incredibly strict about this. For a biological process to be an official hallmark of aging, it has to meet 3 very specific premises.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it has to manifest naturally during normal aging, so everybody gets it. Second, if you experimentally dial up this process in a lab organism, it has to actually accelerate their aging.
So if you force the mechanism to happen, the organism just ages faster.
Exactly, they get older quicker.
Yeah.
And then the third premise is kind of the holy grail. If you experimentally fix or amend this specific process, it has to slow normal aging and actually increase healthy lifespan.
Right, though science is still desperately working on that last one for humans.
Very much so. But that is the defining criteria for the list.
And I want to say right up front to you, the listener, that we are not framing this as some depressing inevitability.
No, not at all.
This is a fascinating, under-the-hood look at your own biology. It is basically the ultimate user's manual to the human machine.
It really is. And to make sense of it all, biologists group these hallmarks into 3 distinct categories.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a crumbling empire.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, because first you have the initial invaders,
Yeah.
the primary causes. Then you have your own army going rogue, so the body's backfiring defenses. And finally, you have the total supply chain collapse, which is the systemic failure.
That is a perfect framework for visualizing this because the whole process relies entirely on causality. Like one failure directly triggers the next.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the foundation.
Yeah.
The empire's invaders, the
Yeah.
primary hallmarks.
Right.
According to the research, these are the root causes of cellular damage, and it all starts with genome instability. Basically, our DNA is taking physical hits every single second, right?
Constantly. I mean, abnormal chemical structures form in your DNA thousands of times a day.
Thousands.
Thousands. And this happens partly from environmental factors like, UV radiation from the sun, but mostly it's from oxidative stress.
Which is just from living, right?
Yeah, it's just a natural toxic byproduct of your own cells producing energy. Now, your cells do have a massive molecular repair crew that works around the clock to fix these structural breaks.
But over decades, that repair crew just kind of gets overwhelmed.
Exactly. Unrepaired errors start to accumulate, and the actual genetic code gets corrupted.
Right. And this directly triggers the second primary hallmark, which is epigenomic alterations. And I have to say, this one completely blew my mind.
It's wild, isn't it?
It really is. Because if your genome is the master instruction manual for your body, epigenetics is essentially the system of sticky notes and paper clips telling the cell which pages to actually read.
Yeah, think about the physics of a cell for a second. Your DNA chain is roughly 2 meters long, but it has to be stuffed inside a microscopic nucleus.
Which is insane to picture.
It is. And to fit, it has to be tightly spooled around these proteins called histones. Depending on what a specific cell needs to do, it physically unspools certain sections of that DNA to turn specific genes on and keeps the rest tightly clamped shut.
Right, so a skin cell has the exact same DNA as a liver cell. It's just reading different pages of the manual.
Precisely. And the researchers highlight a specific set of proteins called sirtuins.
Okay, so these are the paper clips.
Exactly. They bind the DNA onto the histones to keep the unneeded genes permanently turned off. But to do their job, sirtuins require a cellular fuel source, a molecule called NAD.
And here is the direct causal link from the first hallmark. As you age, your cells are taking so much DNA damage that they consume massive amounts of NAD just trying to power the repair enzyme.
Yep. The repair crew takes all the fuel.
So because the cell's battery drains trying to fix the DNA, the NAD levels drop. And because NAD drops, the sirtuins lose their fuel. The paper clips literally fall off.
They lose their grip. So the DNA unspools into total chaos. Genes that are supposed to be permanently turned off start waking up, and genes that should be on get suppressed.
Your cells literally lose their identity.
Exactly. You end up with like a skin cell that is suddenly trying to produce liver enzymes. It's just cellular confusion.
Wow. But the most famous primary hallmark has to be telomere shortening. I know everyone always uses the shoelace analogy for this.
Oh, the eye clicks.
Yeah. Comparing telomeres to the little plastic tips at the ends of our chromosomes. But it really is the best way to visualize it.
It is, because it perfectly explains the mechanical limitation.
Yeah.
Every time a cell divides, its DNA replication machinery has to copy the chromosome, but it physically cannot copy all the way to the very tip.
So the tiny piece gets left behind.
Right. A tiny piece of that protective telomere gets sliced off with every single division.
Like a fuse burning down.
Exactly.
The biologist Leonard Hayflick discovered that a normal human cell can only divide 40 to 60 times before that protective tip completely wears away.
The Hayflick limit.
Right. And once the telomere is gone, the cell just stops dividing altogether. But here is where I get genuinely confused by the research.
Okay, what's that?
The research shows that our bodies actually possess an enzyme called telomerase.
Yeah.
And its entire job is to magically elongate those telomeres in our stem cells.
Yeah.
Basically putting fresh plastic tips back on the shoelaces.
Yeah, it rebuilds them.
So if we have the blueprint for this enzyme, why doesn't our body just pump all of our normal cells full of telomerase to stop aging forever?
What's fascinating here is that the body is making a very calculated, very dangerous evolutionary trade-off.
How so?
Well, yes, if your telomeres wear down, your tissues eventually lose the ability to regenerate. But think about what happens if a cell can divide endlessly without its telomeres ever wearing down.
It just keeps multiplying.
Right. Uncontrolled infinite cell division is essentially the clinical definition of cancer.
Oh, wow. So we're basically trading eternal youth for not getting tumors every time we scrape a knee.
Pretty much. That 40 to 60 division limit is a built-in kill switch. The body uses telomere shortening to put a strict speed limit on cell proliferation, so mutated cells cannot easily grow into runaway tumors.
It's an evolutionary defense mechanism.
Exactly. A defense against cancer.
Which perfectly transitions us into the second major category of our deep dive, the antagonistic hallmarks. Because when this primary damage occurs, when the DNA mutates and the telomeres burn down, the body doesn't just surrender.
No, it fights back.
Right. But over time, this rogue army of defense mechanisms backfires, and it actually becomes the main driver of aging.
This is where we really start to see the complex machinery of the cell working against itself. And one of the most critical antagonistic hallmarks is deregulated nutrient sensing.
Let's get into this, because this directly relates to a lot of the diet trends listeners might be familiar with right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Cells have pathways to sense macronutrients. And the researchers focus heavily on a specific biological pathway called MTOR.
Right, MTR is huge.
When times are good and nutrients are abundant, MTOR acts like a green light. It induces growth, protein synthesis, and, cell building.
But when food is scarce, a different sensor called AMPK detects the drop in energy and slams the brakes on MTOR to conserve resources.
And this is crucial, because when MTOR is turned off, the cell stops building and starts cleaning house.
Exactly. It begins recycling damaged parts to survive the perceived famine.
So if you've ever wondered why intermittent fasting is such a massive trend right now, this is the exact biochemical reason. You are trying to trigger AMPK to hit the brakes on MTOR, forcing your cells into repair mode.
Which is great for cellular cleanup.
But I find a massive irony here. In a growing child, you absolutely want MTOR upregulated for growth. But wait, so the exact same MTOR pathway that helps us grow and thrive when we are young actually accelerates aging and cancer incidence if it remains overactive in a fully grown adult.
Precisely. If you forcibly overactivate MTOR in adult mice in a lab, it drastically shortens their lifespan.
That's crazy.
Conversely, interventions that inhibit MTOR like strict caloric restriction or administering an immunosuppressive drug called rapamycin have been shown to be incredibly robust at extending lifespan across multiple species.
But why would evolution design a pathway that actively kills us later in life?
Because from an evolutionary standpoint, Nature doesn't really care what happens to you after you've successfully reproduced and raised your offspring.
Ouch. Good point.
Yeah, evolution rigorously selects for pathways that promote rapid early life growth like MTOR. It completely ignores late life maintenance. Biologists actually call this antagonistic pleiotropy.
Antagonistic pleiotropy.
Right. It means a gene that is highly beneficial in youth becomes actively detrimental in old age.
The ultimate double-edged sword. And this ties directly into another major defense mechanism that fails, which is the loss of proteostasis.
Yeah, protein failure.
Basically, proteins are the physical workers of the cell. And to function, they have to be folded into very specific 3D shapes. I think of it like highly complex cellular origami.
That's exactly what it is. But due to the primary DNA damage we discussed earlier, the instructions for the origami get corrupted.
Right. But if these proteins are misfolding and just becoming useless junk, where does all that microscopic trash actually go? Does the cell just fill up with garbage?
Eventually, yeah, it does. Normally, special helper proteins try to refold them or chop them up for recycling, but as we age, those systems fail.
So the trash just piles up.
Exactly. The misfolded proteins start sticking together, clumping into these toxic aggregates. This is actually a major hallmark of severe neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And at the same time, the power plants of the cell, the mitochondria, start to leak.
Mitochondrial dysfunction. The power plants lose their efficiency.
Right. So instead of cleanly burning fuel, they start spewing toxic exhaust, which are reactive oxygen species. And that triggers widespread inflammatory alarms.
Which creates the perfect storm for the most insidious antagonistic hallmark of all. Cellular senescence.
Ah,
The zombie cells. This was honestly the wildest part of the research for me. Earlier, we talked about how cells stop dividing when their telomeres get too short, or if their DNA takes too much damage.
right. The kill switch.
Normally, a severely damaged cell will trigger apoptosis. It gracefully self-destructs for the good of the organism so a healthy cell can take its place. But senescent cells just refuse to do that.
They exit the cell cycle entirely. They aren't dividing like a cancer cell, but they refuse to die. They just sit there dormant.
But it's so much worse than them just taking up space. These zombie cells start secreting a highly toxic distress signal, this cocktail of inflammatory molecules called the SASP.
Senescence-associated secretory phenotype.
Right, and this SASP acts like a poison that actually induces senescence in the healthy neighboring cells around it.
It literally infects the surrounding tissue. In our youth, the immune system is programmed to hunt down and clear out these rare senescent cells.
Like specialized zombie hunters.
Exactly. But as we age, the immune system weakens, and the zombies start to outnumber the hunters. And the research shows that if you use targeted drugs to clear out these senescent cells in older mice, it dramatically delays the onset of age-related physical decline.
That is incredible. Which
Yeah.
brings us to the inevitable conclusion of all this microscopic warfare. The final category. The integrative hallmarks.
The system failure.
Right. The initial invaders breached the walls, the rogue army of defenses backfired, and eventually you get a systemic supply chain collapse across the whole body.
And this is where the underlying cellular chaos finally translates into the visible signs of aging we all recognize. Stem cell exhaustion is a massive driver of this.
Because your stem cells are your reserve troops. They sit in tissues like the skin, the gut lining, and the bone marrow, just waiting to divide and replenish damaged cells.
But because of everything we just discussed, the telomere shortening, the DNA damage, the toxic zombie cells surrounding them, the reserve troops are totally depleted.
The proportion of healthy stem cells plummets, and the ones left divide incredibly slowly.
Right, so the tissue just loses its ability to rebuild itself. And compounding that local failure is a global failure. Altered intercellular communication.
Basically, the way the different organs talk to each other breaks down. I kept thinking of it like a town's fire alarm system.
Okay, I like that.
The normal role of inflammation is like calling the fire department to a specific, localized house fire, say, a cut on your finger.
Sure.
But in the aging body, you develop what biologists call inflammaging. Because of all those zombie cells screaming their toxic SASP signals, it's like chronic, low-grade fire alarms are constantly ringing in every single neighborhood simultaneously.
And when the alarms never turn off, your firefighters, your immune cells become completely exhausted. They start destroying healthy tissue as collateral damage in a fight that never actually ends.
Now, up to this point, we've been working mostly off the original 2013 framework. But in 2023, the researchers realized the picture was even more complex, and they officially updated the model.
Right. They expanded it from 9 hallmarks to 12.
They explicitly added chronic inflammation, which we just discussed, but they also added two major systemic failures, macrotophagy and dysbiosis.
Macrotophagy is fascinating because it loops right back to our discussion about misfolded proteins.
The cellular trash.
Exactly. Autophagy is the cell's internal recycling center. It is the mechanism that bags up the cellular trash and dissolves it.
So when macrotophagy declines, the cellular garbage trucks literally go on strike.
Yep. The toxic protein clumps just sit there, paralyzing the cell.
And then there's dysbiosis, which is the breakdown of our microbiome. We hear a lot about gut health online, but the 2023 update clarifies exactly why it's a hallmark of aging.
It isn't just about having bad digestion.
Right. Your gut microbiome is a massive symbiotic barrier. As we age, that specific community of bacteria changes, the intestinal barrier weakens, and actual bacterial toxins leak into the bloodstream.
It's essentially a breach. The gut starts communicating a state of panic to the rest of the body, heavily driving that global inflammaging we talked about.
It is a perfect example of how a localized issue in the gut drives a systemic failure everywhere else. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, this is the best part.
The 2023 update also notes further cutting-edge hallmarks that are currently being intensely studied. And one of them sounds like pure science fiction.
It really does.
The resurrection of endogenous retroviruses.
This is staggering discovery, and it connects several of our hallmarks together perfectly.
To explain this to the listener, about 8% of the human genome is actually made up of ancient viral DNA.
Which is just a crazy fact on its own.
Millions of years ago, retroviruses infected our evolutionary ancestors. And over time, their genetic code just became permanently embedded in our own DNA. It's supposed to be dead code, kept permanently dormant.
But remember the primary hallmark we discussed earlier, epigenomic alterations.
Yes, the paperclips falling off.
Exactly.
As our cells take damage and the NAD battery drains, the sirtuin paperclips lose their grip on the genome. And when the DNA unspools, those ancient viral sequences are no longer clamped shut.
They wake up.
They wake up. These ancient retroviruses actually start transcribing themselves inside our modern cells.
They awaken, and the cell's immune sensors detect this viral material. The cell thinks it's under an active viral attack, which drives massive inflammation and pushes the cell directly into senescence.
We are literally being aged, in part, by ancient viruses hiding inside our own genetic code.
It sounds like a movie plot. And interestingly, researchers have noted that neutralizing these awakened viruses with specific antiretroviral therapies can actually block aspects of tissue aging in animal models.
It's unbelievable. It really drives home how insanely complex, yet mechanically logical, this entire process is.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the researchers highlight an alternative framework that runs parallel to the hallmarks. It's called the 7 Pillars of Aging.
Okay, what does that model focus on?
What it emphasizes above all else is the deep, inescapable interconnectedness of these biological mechanisms. You cannot isolate the epigenetics from the misfolded proteins or the zombie cells from the stem cell exhaustion.
Right, it's not a checklist you just cross off one by one. It's a single tangled web.
Precisely. But the silver lining of that interconnectedness is that targeting one failure often treats the others.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The research demonstrates that if you therapeutically improve the lifespan mechanisms in one specific tissue, say the liver, you actually slow down the aging process in completely different tissues, like the brain or the muscles.
Because the signaling molecules, the communication, improves across the whole board.
Exactly.
If you finally fix the fire alarm in one neighborhood, the whole town benefits.
They are entirely interdependent.
So what does this all mean? We started by talking about the body like a crumbling empire, and it is clear that aging is not just a mysterious, unstoppable passage of time.
No, it's really not.
It is a categorizable sequence of events. It is the slow accumulation of DNA hits and the failure of our epigenetic paperclips. It's the burning down of our chromosomal fuses.
It's the invasion of toxic zombie cells, the constant ringing of immune system fire alarms, and, the awakening of ancient viruses.
It is simply biology operating exactly as evolution designed it to, prioritizing rapid early life growth and leaving the maintenance crew entirely underfunded in the later years.
It's a harsh reality, but that's evolution for you.
Exactly. And understanding these 12 distinct mechanisms is the absolute first step for you, the listener, to evaluate any longevity, diet, or medical information you encounter out there.
Because there's a lot of misinformation.
Tons of it. But whether you're looking at intermittent fasting and MTOR or a supplement targeting NAD, you don't have to just accept getting older as a vague concept anymore. You now know the actual biochemical blueprint of what is happening under the hood.
This raises an important question, one that I think reshapes how we view our entire future as a species.
What's that?
We mentioned at the very beginning that the third defining premise of a hallmark of aging is the opportunity to decelerate, stop, or even reverse it through therapeutic interventions.
The ability to actually fix the machine.
Right. But think about the profound philosophical implication of that premise. If biological aging is not an inevitable mystical law of the universe, if it is merely a specific checklist of 12 treatable biochemical errors, what happens when science eventually learns how to cure those errors?
Like curing any other disease.
Exactly. Just like we learn to cure bacterial infections with antibiotics or fix a broken bone, what happens to human identity, to the structure of society, and to the very concept of a lifespan when aging is no longer an absolute, terrifying certainty, but rather a manageable medical condition?
A world where the cascade failure can be paused, where the cellular garbage is cleared, the genetic paperclips hold strong, and the biological clock stops ticking.
It changes everything.
That is a wild, paradigm-shifting thought to leave off on.
We've mapped out exactly how the engine wears itself out. Now we just have to wait and see if we can finally invent the ultimate mechanic.